This video is sponsored by Manta Sleep, more on them later. Romania is not exactly a country known for having Europe's fastest, newest or most modern railway. In fact, battered trains and very old rolling stock are still the norm rather than the exception. And our ride today will be no exception, as we embark on a 14-hour overnight ride on board one of Europe's oldest sleeper train carriages. Join me for the rough ride through the brutal summer heat and the beautiful Romanian countryside, as I show you why, despite these challenging conditions, I actually kind of liked my journey on board this retro night train carriage. Hello, here from Baia Mare in Romania, where today we're catching the 14-hour sleeper train down to Bucharest. This service should use Romania's oldest sleeper carriages, which are approaching 60 years old, so definitely looking forward to checking out what those are like. Let's head down to Bucharest. Our journey begins in Baia Mare, a former mining city in northern Romania, tucked away at the edge of the Carpathian Mountains in the historic region of Maramureș. The current station is actually located quite a bit away from the city center. As you probably guessed from the station building design, this station opened in the 1960s, which replaced the former downtown station, which was demolished in favor of other land uses. But you can easily reach the city center and other parts of the city with a quick ride on the trolleybus network. Unfortunately, the station building today sees very little use. It was built during one of the busiest periods for Baia Mare's mining industry, back when the railway played a much bigger role in the city. But by 2017, only around 400 passengers were using the station every day, which is hardly anything for a city of around 130,000 people. Things may have improved slightly since then, as the station has gone from around 7 daily train departures in 2017 to now roughly 15 daily departures serving the two lines from the city. And hey, the basic amenities are here. There's a ticket office, toilets, and a combination of a convenience store and a bar. And not to forget the hairdresser, allowing you to get a fresh fade before your important business in Bucharest tomorrow morning. Heading onto the platforms, not a lot is going on here. There's a couple of these Siemens D0 units parked away awaiting their next duties, as well as a locomotive shunting a couple of carriages in the distance, not to forget the sole parked freight train. The station actually also sees one international train every day in the form of the Eurocity service to Budapest in Hungary that continues to Vienna in Austria. So these Siemens D0 trains behind me are actually very common here in Romania, despite them being just a fairly basic regional train. That's at least what I think of them as. They are also used on long distance work, running services upwards of 7-8 hours, some of which even run overnight. I would say that's actually quite poor. I'll put something up on the screen with some examples. So hopefully, even though our train will be around 40 years older, it will have an actual bed and should provide a slightly better overnight experience. Our train tonight will be operated by CEFR, the National Railway Company of Romania, who runs most long-distance and a good chunk of regional services in the country. However, there is also a lot of private operators in Romania, but the only one of those that regularly serve Baia Mare is Interregio Călători, running regional services with second-hand diesel trains from Germany. So as you could probably tell from the D0 trains here, the rolling stock in Romania is definitely in various states of disrepair, or repair I guess you could say. And that's also what I've heard about the sleepers, is that some people say they are lovely old carriages with comfy beds from the golden era of rail travel with opening windows and a real time capsule. And others are not so positive about them, mentioning things like the carriages being completely broken, dirty, and there's even a few horror stories about bedbugs. Well, I'm yet to find out what the story is gonna be today, but you might have an idea from the title already. So, our train should be arriving in just a couple of minutes. It has actually started over in Satu Mare, but it only carries a couchette and seated carriage from there, with the sleeper being added here in Baia Mare. So, that's why we're starting here today. Anyway, train coming in just a few minutes. And after shunting the D0 train away from platform number 1 and putting it over on platform number 3, our train appears in the distance, running pretty much right on time. And just like that, that's our night train arrived. It'll be a little while before we can board, as our sleeper carriage will be attached here, and it's currently waiting in the depot. So, our locomotive first detaches from the 2 carriages it has carried here from Mare. Then it goes to the depot to attach the 2 other carriages, and then drives them all the way through the station, to then finally reverse back into the station and attach those back to the 2 original carriages. And just take a look at our sleeper carriage coming in here. This definitely does not look to be in the best condition, if I'm being honest, at least externally. Anyway, after attaching these carriages back to the 2 original ones from Mare, the shunting is finally completed. The first of many locomotives to haul our train tonight is this Class 64 locomotive built by Romania's Electropower Craiova Works. These trains are actually heavy rebuilds of older Class 60 locomotives from the 60s and 70s by the same manufacturer. And I think our example could use a trip back to the workshop for a window repair. Right, that's the shunting complete and our train is ready for departure. So let's quickly go to carriage number 5 and find our home for the next 14 hours. And here we have it, what might just be Europe's oldest sleeper train carriages that are still running in regular night train service. I'll get into the history of these carriages later in the video, but now, wow, these carriages look nothing like their outside. Just take a look at this well-preserved, old-school elegance design with real wood panels and a few hints of gold. And here we are, my cabin for the next 14 hours, which I've reserved solo occupancy of. What a vibe this carriage is. We'll have a closer look at it after departure, but as you can hear, it's time for that now. We depart Baia Mare a couple of minutes behind schedule, beginning this long journey down to the capital. And now, as we take the slow route south down towards Cluj, let's take a closer look at the route map for today's journey. We are on board IRN 12648, which started over in Mare before coming here to Baia Mare, where we joined the train. From here, we continue down to Dej, where we will swap to an electric locomotive, before continuing to Cluj, where we have to change direction and add some more carriages. Then we will carry on overnight all the way to Bucharest, arriving the next morning. Journey time from Baia Mare is scheduled to be 14 hours exactly, covering 686 kilometers, giving the train an average speed of 49 kilometers per hour. Also, this is only a temporary service that runs while the night train's normal route from Baia Mare to Bucharest is blocked for construction works. Right, welcome on board. Here we are in our humble home for the next 14 hours down to Bucharest. It's definitely a bit hot in here because we only have old school air conditioning in the form of an opening window. But check out this handle you use to open it with. It's like an old car. Just turn it and boom. Open and close it does. How cool is that? Our journey initially takes us south on the single track unelectrified line towards Jibou and Dej, where we are traveling at some alright speeds at least for Romania. Despite the fairly low amount of train traffic in this region in general, we do occasionally have to stop and meet another train, like this stopping service operated by Interregio Călători. Also, just take a look at these old semaphore signals that are still in use on this railway line. Right, let me give you some backstory on these retro carriages. The first examples of this type were built back in 1959 by Hansa in Bremen, Germany, making the oldest examples almost 70 years old by now. However, they did continue building this model until the early 1970s, so many of the carriages are only around 60 years old. They spent most of their lives in service on the German railways before being bought by CFR in the early 2000s and modernized in Bucharest. And somehow, all these years later, they are still going strong on many domestic night trains across Romania. And now I wanted to show you the cabin interior, but then I heard a strange knocking noise coming from the mirror cabinet. That's right, it's the transition to today's video sponsor, Manta Sleep. Manta Sleep offers an extensive range of sleep masks and accessories to help you sleep anywhere, which is really handy for someone like me who travels a lot, especially in the summer season where the sun comes up early. That is why I've recently been using the Manta Sound Sleep Mask when traveling. It really does block out all of the light, which is incredibly useful when you're trying to sleep on a train or plane or anywhere else where you have little control over your surroundings. It is also compact and super comfortable thanks to the adjustable design, allowing you to find the perfect fit without any squeezing on your face. And the built-in Bluetooth speakers lets you play something relaxing if you're not a fan of the classic Romanian railway background soundtrack. And Manta Sleep has a special deal for my viewers. Use the link below in the description and my promo code IntercitySimon for 10% off your Manta Sleep order. Right, back to our sleeper train carriage. Right, so let's take a closer look around the room we'll be spending the next many hours in. So the first thing to note is that while there is of course light controls and a light up here and some reading lights over here, none of them seem to be working at the moment, and there's no light in the corridor either, so I think it's either just turned off or we have no power at all. But yeah, the rest of the room, fairly standard. Up here is an upper bunk, and here's my lower bunk where we'll probably be sleeping. See over here you'll have a few tables and a cup holder, as well as this small pocket. Of course our opening window over here with the handle to open and close. Over here we have a little shelf, which if I remove my phone, actually hides a wash basin. So you can wash your hands a bit and stuff. Okay, well, good pressure. And up here is a little mirror, which provides a free water bottle. And I think this is sort of a towel and welcome kit. Then up here I have some snacks, but yeah, storage. As for luggage, plenty of space all the way around. There's also loads of coat hook and an interconnecting door if you know your neighbors, as well as a ladder to help you get into the top bunk, a small bin and a step which can fold away like this, and yeah, a few more coat hooks. Overall, considering it's 60 years old, it's actually quite nice. And here are a few things I forgot to mention. The doors can of course be locked, but only from the inside. And there is also a sketchy but working power outlet. I'm not sure if the ones in your cabin are actually surge protected, but it looks like the ones in the corridor might be. I should also mention that the welcome kit contains both some soap, some wet wipes, as well as a toothbrush and toothpaste, and a larger towel, which I think you might be meant to use in the onboard shower, but as you'll see later, don't count on this working. And also just be aware, if you leave your window open, the line side clearance along many of the railways isn't exactly great, which might get your bed a bit dirty. Honestly, I'm having a pretty good time on board so far. We are just traveling slowly through the beautiful hills of northern Romania, making a couple of station stops in smaller towns and villages every once in a while. This is Jibou, a smaller town of under 10,000 inhabitants located on the railway junction between Romania's railway lines 400 and 412. But the town is also home to a surprisingly large botanical garden, hidden away on an old estate ground. And now our train has hit a red light as we come into the major junction station of Dej. After the signal clears, we proceed into the station, which is actually the start of railway electrification for our journey today, meaning that after we come to a stop at the station itself, it's time for a locomotive change. There's actually a lot of stuff going on here, with first this small 2-carriage regional train coming into the station while our locomotive detaches from our carriages. Then the interregional daytime train to Cluj we arrive next to departs right in front of us. Then, once that has moved away, our diesel locomotive can shunt onto the main line away from our carriages, allowing our new electric locomotive to be driven through the station and onto the main line behind the diesel locomotive, before finally reversing back into the station and attaching to our carriages. This is a Class 40 locomotive, also built at the Electropower Works in Craiova. However, this design was actually built under license from Swedish ASEA. Over 1,000 of these locomotives were built with a few different variations from 1967 to 1999, with our example being capable of 120 km per hour. Right, that's our locomotive changed, and we will now be under electric power all the way to Bucharest. Although we might swap to another electric loco in Cluj, as we need to run around there anyway, and that is sometimes easier. Anyway, time to get back on board. You really do have to climb into the train from these stations without a proper platform. But we are back on board and we are ready to go around 30 minutes late, which is not really too uncommon in Romania due to various speed restrictions, the state of the infrastructure, track works and late running trains on the single track line. Right, so despite these carriages actually being rather nice on the inside, especially for something that's 60 years old, I am a little bit worried about how well I'm going to sleep tonight, because it is very hot. I'm sweating like crazy, and the only way to control the temperature in here is by opening the window. So if it doesn't cool down a bit tonight, then I might be in for a rough night of sleep. Our journey continues again as I decide to kick back in bed and just watch the world go by while we travel south at all right speeds. As you probably guessed, there's no Wi-Fi on board, so all you get for entertainment is the changing landscapes as we now head into Transylvania. Our train is now on the approach to Cluj-Napoca, the second largest city in Romania and the largest in Transylvania. We arrive at 2024, still running roughly half an hour late. We have an extended stop planned here as our train needs to change driving direction and have some additional carriages added. The way it's done here is by first detaching the locomotive, which is now at the wrong end, and then they will reverse the carriages being added here alongside a new locomotive in from a siding located at the correct end of the train that will now become the front. This time we have a Class 41 locomotive, which is largely identical to the previous Class 40, but this one has a higher top speed of 160 km per hour. Right, back on board. Didn't feel much, had to sprint back because they're trying to do it as quick as possible as we are still late. But yeah, new locomotive on board and a few more carriages, and in theory it should be our last shunting maneuver, but maybe they'll add another locomotive during the night, who knows, it is Romania after all. But anyway, in the meantime, the lights in here are now working, so that's pretty good as we're now heading into the night. And in the meantime, while I calm down a bit after the sprint from the loco back to our sleeper carriage, we are now departing Cluj the same way we came in, heading into a beautiful sunset as our day is slowly coming to an end. What a fantastic way to end the day, just enjoying the sunset from the comfort of this retro sleeping carriage. But these carriages probably won't be around forever, as Romania is slowly modernizing its railways. For instance, we had to wait here for Romania's newly refurbished flagship intercity train, which was occupying the temporarily single track section ahead. Honestly, I'm having a great time. It really feels like I've been transported back in time to a 70s movie, traveling to some important business in the capital in these carriages from the golden era of railways. It is really like a moving museum. Right, now as the last daylight fades, let's go check out the toilets and get ready to go to bed. Toilets are found at the end of the carriages, and this is the one in mine. It is definitely a bit old school, but it honestly doesn't look too bad. There's working water with good pressure. There was also soap, towels and toilet paper. And while the toilet itself was definitely one of those old school ones that flushes onto the track, it had a working flush and seemed to be clean. And there is actually a real shower here, at least sort of. I mean, there was a little bit of water coming out, but let's just say I didn't feel brave enough to attempt to have a shower here. Right, back in my cabin, it's time for one last look out of the window, and then it's time for us to get some sleep. It is still quite hot, so the window and its noise will have to remain during the night, but apart from that, the bed seems comfortable. Good night. Good morning, it's just around sunrise time and our train has just about left the Carpathian Mountains, and to my surprise, we are actually running pretty much on time. I must admit, I was actually kinda hoping that our train would be a little late, as that would mean we would have the sunrise surrounded by the mountains. But hey, I can hardly complain about a Romanian night train actually running basically to time. We make a stop at the small village of Florești Prahova, and from here on it should just be around 1 hour till we get to Bucharest. We are basically already out of the mountains, and from here on, it's just flat fields all the way to the capital. Well, good morning. It's around 5:40 and somehow we are on time. Didn't sleep too great, which is because the carriages are quite noisy and old and bumpy. And if you want it to be quiet, you have to close the window, but then it gets too hot in here. And the carriage is also quite old, which means a lot of dust has built up, which triggers my allergies. Took some antihistamine, but that's all you can do. But apart from that, managed to get 5-6 hours, which was not too bad for an old sleeper train like this, I would say. So yeah, somehow we are on time, just about to pull into Ploiești. And here we are pulling into Ploiești Vest, which is our last stop before Bucharest. Ploiești is actually one of the most important industrial cities in all of Romania, with it historically being known as the oil capital. The first oil refinery in Romania was actually built near here in the 1850s, and nowadays there's even an oil museum. But our train is currently not running on oil, at least not directly, as we are pulling electricity straight from the overhead wires. And, by the way, they did actually swap the locomotive at least once during the night, as I can just about tell back here from my sleeper carriage that the locomotive pulling us now is in the new color scheme. Turns out we are currently being hauled by a heavily overhauled Class 40 locomotive, which re-entered service just a couple of months ago. These are known as the Transmontana locomotives, or Class 481, and were made by Softronic over in Craiova. Certainly a stark contrast from the actual Class 40 locomotive we had earlier in the journey. And now, as we are speeding to Bucharest at the maximum permitted speed for these sleeper carriages of 140 km per hour, let's talk about tickets and my thoughts on this journey. I booked my private sleeper room 2 weeks in advance directly on the CFR website and just showed my ticket on my phone to the conductor. This set me back around 490 Romanian lei, which I thought was pretty good value for 14 hours in a private sleeper. As for the train itself, I really wanted to fully love these old sleeping carriages. They definitely look a bit rough and dated on the outside, but once you step on board, you're teleported back in time to the 1960s, into a carriage that's actually well maintained and in good condition on the inside. So, if you want to ride one of these carriages, maybe don't do it in the middle of a heat wave, and definitely bring some antihistamine if stuff like 60-year-old built-up dust can trigger your allergies. Apart from this, I'm glad to have had the chance to experience these carriages, and while I probably wouldn't want to be riding them every week, I would not hesitate to book a trip again. In the end, in almost a miracle for a Romanian night train, we actually pull into Bucharest North Station at 06:25, just 3 minutes behind schedule. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe to the channel, as I try to post a new video every Sunday. And if you want to give the channel a little extra support, consider becoming a member. For just a couple of euros every month, you get early access to all my videos, as well as exclusive travel updates. And if you want to see what Romania's best overnight train looks like, why not watch my video on the exclusive Astra Transcarpatic Sleeper by clicking the card on screen now. Thanks again to Manta for sponsoring this video, and thanks to you for watching.